Well, I'm going to say good morning. How's your day going aside from, dealing with media people asking invasive questions?
My morning's going great, and go ahead and ask all the questions you want.
Are you dialing in from Cincinnati or is that just the business venture that's happening?
No, I live in Cincinnati, but I'm actually in New York City right now. I'm visiting my mother. It was her birthday yesterday. So I'm in her basement in Midtown Manhattan, right near Times Square. It's the quietest place I could find.
But you're originally from Queens, correct?
I'm from Queens. Yep. Yep.
Whereabouts in Queens?
Corona specifically.
So
Yeah.
a lot of games at Shea Stadium in your upbringing?
Yeah. I grew up right behind Shea Stadium. I could hear the roar of the crowd. It was pretty cool.
Wow. Now, when you were growing up going to Shea Stadium, the food was not great there. Now, Citi Field's like a culinary wonderland.
Right. Yeah. Night and day. Totally different. Absolutely. Yeah. There wasn't really much, I think, outside from the hot dog and the pretzels, much to talk about when it came to food.
Cracker Jacks and Budweiser and all that. But hey, we're focusing on you here, the Beard nominated chef and entrepreneur and all that. What was your graduation from just being in the kitchen to realizing, hey, I should also own places and these should be my menu creations?
Yeah, I think you basically that's it. It's just a natural progression. You get to a point where you say, okay, I need the control. You feel like you have the skills, and yet it's still kind of um, scary because I'm a chef, and learning the business side of everything was probably the biggest challenge. Um, but yeah, really, you have a vision, you have these ideas of things that you want to do, and you feel handcuffed when you're working for other people. So you have to take the plunge.
By naming a restaurant Salazar, I think you're putting your stamp on it just a little bit.
Yeah, that's it was one of those things where we tossed around 1,000 names, and everyone just kept saying, well, why don't you just name it Salazar? You got such a cool name. And I was like, I don't know. And eventually nothing else kind of landed. So we said, what the hell, let's go with it.
What exactly was the gateway towards going out to Cincinnati? Because now it's a world-class city, but there were years when all really people knew about Cincinnati was the Bengals are there, and that's that.
That's pretty much, yeah. That was kind of honestly my only reference was the Bengals, the Reds, and WRP in Cincinnati. Some of you might be old enough to remember that TV show from the 70s.
Sure.
So yeah, there really wasn't a lot going on. It was honestly, the catalyst was I had a young son. He was a baby, and one day I just woke up and said to myself, I don't get to see him. My wife and I were both kind of like two ships passing in the night. I'd go to work um, long after they were already gone, and get home long after they were already asleep. And so I just had this idea of like, there's got to be somewhere else that we can go. And Cincinnati kind of found us. I thought we'd stay somewhere on the East Coast, but a headhunter got a hold of my resume,
Oh,
and the rest is history. So we thought we'd only stay for a few years, and it's been 16 years now.
okay. That was going to be my follow-up question of how long did you think that you were going to be there? Was it originally like a one-year deal through the headhunter?
No, it was like 3 years, and this was all during the height of the recession, late 2008. So it was kind of one of those things where there really wasn't much going on anywhere. Everywhere was kind of like in that holding pattern, and so we thought, okay, we're going to bide our time here for 3 years, and then figure out what's next. And then what was next was the opportunity to open our own restaurant.
With New York, going back, you're visiting family. That's why you're back. I'm pretty much a lifelong New Yorker, but I don't find that New York has anything at this point that you can't find elsewhere. In other words, you used to go, that is the destination for restaurants, for Broadway, etc. And now everything is elsewhere. What are some of the world-class things that you can find in Cincinnati besides top cuisine from yourself?
Sure, as you just mentioned, I mean, you can get everything. We've got, all the arts, the amazing museums, the architecture is phenomenal. Broadway caliber shows, so everything. I mean, you name it. It's just obviously there's less of it, but it's all there. It's all very accessible, and it's just easier to get access. Honestly, it's funny because We were talking about like if you want to go to the Bronx Zoo, it's like an all-day affair. If you want to go to the zoo in Cincinnati, it's it's 15 minutes each way, and it's a 3 hour affair, not an all-day affair. So there's something to be said for the ease of getting to all those things too. Like going to a Bengals game, it's you drive 15 minutes. You don't gotta contend with traffic for 2 hours.
Yeah, as a media person, you sometimes have this fantasy of going, well, if I move to Cincinnati, I could get on the guest list of everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas you kind of have to fight and fight and fight in New York and prove your worth. So for you, you immediately stood out, but I'm sure you're seeing tremendous growth in the culinary scene of Cincinnati since you got there. Like, in other words, you're an originator, but now because you're there, other people, I believe, have come there.
Sure, it's a great city, punches above its weight for sure. In terms of a lot of things, but definitely on the culinary side, it's like, yeah, when I got there, there was maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 chefs that were, you could say were really doing great stuff. And now I can't even count. I mean, there's just so many people doing amazing stuff. We're getting accolades from Esquire and Food and Wine and James
Yeah.
Beard. Places are noticing our little city, so it's really cool to see, a lot of these people just kind of stand out.
In terms of you, the restaurants that you keep up, it's not like it's the same menu or even cuisine between all of them. How do you, this is not intended to be a stock question, but how do you keep up with all that? Are you a big delegation kind of person?
Yeah, well, yeah, you have to be. I have great people in their roles, and they're just phenomenal at what they do. So you have to empower people. But I also enjoy the challenge of just coming up with new ideas. I purposely did that because I get bored. I just don't like being stagnant. So challenging myself and the team, and we all kind of thrive on that.
Is it the kind of thing that recipes come from a team of people regularly contributing ideas?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always 100% collaborative. I just, the old adage, right? Three heads are better than one, whatever.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Why not? Why not do it by committee? You're going to typically end up with a much better product.
I think that chefs are more renowned and more popular and respected now than ever. If we go back 30 years, Shep Gordon, the rock manager, he helped spotlight a little bit, but we didn't have, 8 food-oriented channels where chefs were, the focal point. We didn't have restaurant groups like we did now.
Mhm.
Now, the chef's personality and appeal because of the bear, for better or for worse, has increased like 300%. But I have a question for you related to the bear. And that's the whole concept in this last season that they were going to change the menu every single day. Is that feasible on any level? Because I don't see how that would be feasible.
Yeah. So I haven't watched it. I did watch the first season and kind of didn't go back to it again. But there are restaurants that change the menu every day. In fact, I worked in one called Per Se. And
Hmm.
that was what we did every night. You sit down and you discuss what you're going to do the next day. So it is feasible. It's hard. And when they say change the whole menu, it's not the necessarily the entire menu. You're tweaking certain dishes. So maybe this one had artichokes today, and maybe it's going to have asparagus tomorrow, but it's the same protein. And there's always going to be a couple of signature dishes on every menu. There's going to be, for example, at Per Se, it was the salmon cornet and the oysters and pearls, and so you're going to have say there's 10 dishes, you're going to have two or three that are staples. So, but yeah, it's tough. It's doable, but it's not easy.
Is per se part of my ignorance? Is that a Thomas Keller place?
It is a Thomas Keller place. Yeah, that is in Columbus Circle in Manhattan.
He has a role in this last season of The Bear, and he shows how to remove the wishbone from the chicken. I'm curious if he did that to you or you were around that.
Well, I learned how to do that when I was there. So yes, you save a lot of meat if you cut the wishbone out. You end up getting probably another 10% of your chicken. So makes sense.
Wow, fantastic. So, keeping on with the what's happening now, there's two new restaurants coming in spring 2025. Is there anything happening on, say, the cookbook level? Is there a Chef Salazar podcast, et cetera? Or, two new restaurants is plenty?
Yeah, well, it's funny because you would think two new restaurants would be plenty, but I am actually in talks with a couple publishers about a book, and in the new year we're going to sit down and really try to hash that out. Podcast, I'll leave that to you. I think enough people doing it really well, and probably not an avenue I want to go down. But yeah, definitely the cookbook. It's something that I've always kind of put on the back burner. Again, it's just a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to kind of sort through it, and I don't want to half-ass anything. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. But I finally figured, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into this and see what it's all about.
I figured I'd ask about the podcast end because nowadays, anytime the person has X number of restaurants, they feel that they should then have a travel cooking TV show.
My God, wow. Okay, so yeah, maybe with your help we can put it together. I'll be a partner on that one.
Well, hey, two quick questions and then I let you go. And the first one is, in your kitchen, does music play while it's going on, or is that too distracting?
Music plays during prep, but during service, it is too much of a distraction.
And the follow up to that,
Sure.
what music plays while that's going on? And I ask that because I'm finding at least half the chefs I talk to are metalheads.
That's funny. Yeah, I can definitely see that. There's been in a lot of kitchens I worked in, there's a lot of people playing hardcore stuff. Honestly, it's whoever gets there first typically has control. So it's usually the prep cooks, and they're both from Guatemala. So there's typically going to be a lot of Spanish music being played. And then if they relinquish control, then it varies. It could be anything from metal to hip hop to whatever. If I get control, I'm putting old school hip hop on.
Got it. So that makes sense. So the first person who's there has the control. Interesting. Is that how it works with the majority choices in restaurants, or just the music in the kitchen?
Well, not just the music, but yeah, not in everything, but definitely music. That's kind of been the rule.
Well, very interesting stuff. Looking forward to eventually getting to Cincinnati and trying out your spots. Looking forward to that cookbook. And in the meantime, keep up the great work. Really inspiring to see the path that you've created for yourself. And it just seems to keep growing and growing and growing, but in a cool, scalable way.
Thanks, Darren. I really appreciate it, man. It's good meeting you, man.
Paltrocast.